All right, everyone. Welcome back to another rendition of Training Thursdays. I do these trainings every single Thursday. Well, I try. You'll know when I'm not doing it, but try to do this every single Thursday in my Facebook group, the More Than Your Weight Women's Community, which, I'm doing this live. And so if you're watching this live, you are in the community, just as a way to unpack this week's episode or theme, or just kind of what we're talking about, whether it's on my podcast or in the group or what's happening in business. And so I really love doing these because it's kind of an organic space to unpack a particular topic more, but also a space where you can jump on live if you can, and really just interact with me, get a little bit of live coaching, share your thoughts, share your takeaways. I do lives whenever I do challenges, but obviously a challenge is a set thing that maybe you're really giving yourself to for that week. But sometimes you just need a little boost, a little inspiration week to week. And that is what this episode is about. And this training is about. I mentioned this before I hit record. Because so many of you actually listen to the podcast and would like to, you like digesting information in that way, I'm going to start for a time to see how it goes, uploading these not just to my website or YouTube, but also uploading the audio to the podcast. That way, every Tuesday and every Friday, you have some encouragement, some tips, some action points to really help you in your more than your weight journey, to help you find peace with food, feel confident in your body again, and develop a healthy lifestyle that's more than about what you weigh. But if you are not in the Facebook group and you're listening to this via podcast or YouTube, you're going to want to join the Facebook group. I would say out of my email, out of my podcast, out of social media, all that, my Facebook group is like, it's a home. It's a home where you get to kind of get everything, where you get daily posts, unpacking episodes, asking you how you're doing, asking you what are your goals for the week, asking you to reflect on your week. You'll get these trainings. You'll have the challenges that I do are hosted in my Facebook group, and you're just the first to know about everything. But more than that, you're also getting a community. And I really want, if you're in the Facebook group, I want you to tap into that. Like I operate my Facebook group right now as a paid membership. Like the amount of value you get, I could offer in a paid membership, but I do this right now in this way, just because I see so many women are needing support and maybe aren't ready or cannot afford, I don't want to say afford, but are not ready to take that step necessarily for paid coaching. So that's why the group is a great place for you to get support in between. And I hear, I address some common things around when you know what to do, but you don't do it, and all these different things on the podcast recently. To really kind of highlight what makes it hard for us to invest in ourselves. And I'm going to talk about that again in Tuesday's episode. So you're going to want to stay tuned and subscribe to that. But I think one of the things is, sometimes time is a barrier. Sometimes cost is a barrier. Sometimes not trusting ourselves is a barrier. Sometimes, we've tried things over and over and we haven't seen it work. So that's a barrier. Either way, I just really think this group can be a space, not just the podcast, but the group can be a space where you get support as for where you're at. All right. Okay. So if you're not in the group and you're listening to this, join the More Than Your Weight Women's community on Facebook. It is the place to be. And if you are, welcome. I love having you all here. I try to do a welcome, group wise, but privately every time someone joins, to just say, hey, I'm excited that you're here and you are welcome. You belong. Okay. So today we're going to talk about motivation. All right. So on this week's podcast, I believe it was episode 178, was with Dr. Sean, and she has an amazing podcast all about motivation made easy, I think it is. And I was on the podcast, I think episode 18 or 20, can't remember. And she just is a doctor and, the psychology aspect, and really dives into the science and the psychology around motivation. And so she talked a lot about that on this week's podcast. So you're going to want to definitely check that out. Not the replay. Go check that out if you have not yet. Again, it's episode 178 of the More Than Your Weight podcast. Subscribe on any platform. Or you could check it out right on my website, 81345.com. But, she talked about a lot of great things. So I just wanted to expand upon that conversation here and just talk about how to stay consistent when we believe in our mind that motivation runs dry. And this conversation comes from when it comes to eating healthy or exercise or any of that. Many of us are often feeling like that. Let me put my mic thing down. that we're just not motivated. Actually, I polled the group earlier this week, and I asked like, okay, where are you in the different seasons of motivation? And one might be, I feel motivated and I'm taking steps towards a healthier me. Like my motivation, I am motivated, I'm doing something. I feel motivated, but I'm not taking the steps, so I'm not acting. Or I don't feel motivated, but I'm still acting towards and doing those healthy habits. Or I don't feel motivated and I'm not doing anything. Right. So obviously, like you could be one or all of those, or maybe they may alternate, or with certain habits, you feel motivated, but are not taking action. Certain habits, you feel motivated and you aren't. And I just really wanted to highlight like C, like I don't feel motivated, but I'm still taking steps towards my health. And because what I really wanted to highlight here is that sometimes we think motivation, which we're going to unpack exactly what motivation is, by the way. But we think often that motivation is like, I just feel like doing it and I'm motivated to do it, so I'm going to do it. But guess what? Motivation is not all about your feelings. And it is just not, we cannot always be driven. Our feelings are great things. And I think as women, we are actually very in tune with our feelings, and we should be, because they are a guide for us. But they're not always a guide towards what we think we should do. Was it yesterday or the day before? My daughter just is she just is not someone who sleeps the way that a typical child sleeps through the night. And, recently in the last couple weeks or days, she's just been like kind of a sleep regression, I guess you could call it. And so when most of us, and particularly me, are derived of sleep, guess what happens? We're not thinking clearly. We're not even feeling clearly. Like we're tired. And so it often feels like harder to do certain things, and you're not necessarily motivated. So I think it was Tuesday where I had some childcare, and it was wrapping up, and I was going to go pick her up. And I had a little bit of time left after some calls. And I said, you know what, Brianna, this workout is like 15 minutes. You can do it. And I was not motivated. I was tired. Well, I wasn't a typical version of motivated, right? Like I just wanted to do it. I just didn't. But I knew how I would feel. And going back to even what Dr. Sean talks about, my motivation didn't come from how I felt. It came from an autonomous drive that told me like, okay, it is very much in line with who you are, that you work out, even when you don't feel like it. And also, you're going to feel better. And also, that it is one of those non-negotiables to take care of yourself, and you feel good when you do it. And also, it's just part of who you are, that you just work out. It's a part of your more than your weight journey. It's just a part of who I am. And so when I really started to align my motivation in that moment with my values, with who I was, I started to say, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to work out, and I'm going to do maybe a little bit of lighter version. I'm not going to go as intense, which I love. If you haven't heard of street parking, I love street parking because it's just a great, even though I am a CrossFit level 1 trainer and I know how to program here and there, I just love that they have 4 different versions of the daily programming that I can pick and choose which one I feel like doing for the day. And sometimes I'm like, oh man, I need to push myself even though I don't feel, but sometimes in those I'm not motivated. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the shift version because it's not complex. It won't take a lot of my brain, and I'll still get in a good workout. Right. And so it is very much who I am, and in line with my priorities and values to take care of myself through working out. And I didn't feel like doing it. I didn't feel motivated in the normal sense, but I did it. And that's what I want to talk about today, is that motivation, if we're looking at the kind of the dictionary definition, the reason, motivation is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. It's your why. You hear this all the time, like, why do you want to work out? Why do you want to take care of yourself? And it's so important to look at that why. And then, as Dr. Sean talked about, align it with our priorities and values and make it autonomous, and linked to our own choice to do it, and linked to this intrinsic motivation. Because if we're not careful, and if we're constantly making decisions based on what we think others expect us to be, how our body should be, how we should interact with food, or even, just I talked about this in a couple episodes, just the idea of like our expectations even of ourselves that aren't realistic, then our motivation will run dry. We will not feel like doing it. But when we really ask ourselves, why am I wanting to do this? Why am I wanting to eat well? Why am I wanting to exercise regularly? Why am I wanting to manage my stress? Why am I wanting to sleep more? Why am I wanting to break free of emotional eating? Then we'll start to really understand our beliefs and those whys, those beliefs drives our actions, right? And I talk a lot about this with my clients in my group coaching program, in my one-on-one work, and even in this upcoming challenge, the Food Freedom Challenge that's happening in about a week and a half, maybe a week and a half, September 13th. So about 11 days it's all about understanding your mindset and your why. Like, why do you instantly run to a diet when you want to get healthy? Why are you constantly looking at the scale as a measurement for your worth and your health? Why are you labeling certain food as good or bad? Why do you feel like your body should be a size 4? Why do you feel like your worth is tied into how you act and who you are and how you look? Why are you just approaching exercise from a place of fixing your body? Why are you handling your emotions that you're dealing with through food or through lack of food or whatever? It's just figuring out why. And I love approaching this to understanding why from a place of not like shame or condemnation, but understanding just as it is. Why? Because when you can really just look at it as look at your beliefs and look at your why, you'll start to really understand why you're doing what you're doing or why you're not doing what you're doing, right? So Jen Sincero in her book, You Are a Badass, or You Are a Badass Making Money, talks about how belief drives your thoughts, which drive your words, which drive your emotions, which drive your actions and your reality. And so many of us are trying to change that habit part, actions and reality, without looking at our beliefs, right? So when you are motivated, sorry, not when you're motivated. Well, even when you don't feel like the motivated is a complicated word because we all have different definitions of all of this, right? But what I'm trying to say is that you're not going to always feel like doing things. But when you start to look at, and even, because you're tired or, all these other things, but when you align, when you consider like, okay, why is this important to me? And that why is coming from a place of love for your health and love for your body. You're more likely to choose that habit than you would if it's just like, oh, I need to do this in order to fit into these clothes, or I need to do this in order to lose weight. Like, you need to start prioritizing your health now because you're worth it. All right. That was a little preaching to the choir, but I just really wanted to highlight the point that like why we do what we do is our motivation. And I just want you to get to a point that your motivation is coming from a place of love, and is coming from a place of like, it's in line with what you want for your health and life versus what you think it should be. All right. So I'm going to share with you 5 different tips to kind of help you when you're feeling of motivation, or what like, I feel motivated to do that feeling part runs dry when you're not feeling like doing it, right? And the first is, I already talked a lot about it, is looking inward to your beliefs. Like, what do you believe to be true about the different areas of your health, particularly around healthy habits? And in my in the Food Freedom Challenge coming up, we're going to look at just really doing some reflection questions. And even in my Food Freedom Journal, if that's what we're using as the basis for this challenge, we're going to look at our why in 7 different areas: diets, the scale, food, your body, yourself, exercise, exercise, and emotions. I think that's 7. And just really asking yourself, and there's going to be reflection questions, there's going to be a mini training and a live Q&A just to really dive deeper into that. And this is something I love doing with my clients one-on-one in a one-on-one session, but also what I love doing even in a group session is because you get clarity from one another. And I think the challenge is going to be a great aha. But when you have conversation and get asked personal kind of customized questions, you have a lot more breakthrough. I've had so many clients do my Food Freedom Intensive or, my 6-month coaching program. And we talk about mindset in this all the time, because many of us know what to do, but aren't doing it. There's a mindset thing happening, right? And so if you're like, okay, I'm ready to explore the kind of the surface of it, like what, the beginning of that journey, you want to join my Food Freedom Challenge that's happening on September 13th and 19th. It is a free challenge where every day we're going to look at one of those areas and dive deeper into that. So if you haven't signed up yet, sign up in the show notes, or go to madewell345.com/food freedom challenge. And if you have done it before, I did it back in March, or you just think it'd be awesome to do with a friend, please share the link. Okay. I want to make I want to make my free offerings as accessible as possible for people to start to get that support. So even if it's sharing this podcast with a friend. Okay. And I've heard from so many of you that someone shared a podcast episode and it just really blessed a friend. And now they start listening, like, that's what I want. Like, I want more and more women to be encouraged and to get this just this mindset up level. All right. So definitely check out that challenge, the Food Freedom Challenge, if you're looking for tip number 1 to really help look inward to your beliefs. And then tip number 2, we already talked about this, is to align your actions with those new beliefs or your priorities and value. And I love to do this in a goal setting session with clients. And we're going to do this actually the first week of my 6-week boot camp, which I'll talk more about at the end if you're like, what is this boot camp coming up? Where I think often we're making goals out of those shoulds, like I want to lose 30 pounds. And that's fine if you want to do that. But really asking yourself, why? Why is that goal important to you? Why do you want to do that? And then honestly, it's incorporating that into your goal. That's why I like to call it aligned goal setting, or life-giving goal setting. We're just really making sure the goal is aligned with our true values, our true motivations, and our true dreams for our health and our life. And so we're going to do this in the first week of the boot camp coming up. And you could even do this simply by just asking yourself, why? Just keep asking yourself, why is that important? And then you hear that, okay, and what else? And what else? And what else? I'll talk more about this in the other step, but yeah, I'll talk more about the different types of habits in the other step. But basically, when we're doing it this way, we are aligning our beliefs and our actions together, right? So that we're not having limiting beliefs that are holding us back, but we're thinking clearly in such a way that uplifts us and moves us towards it. All right, so tip number 1 was look inward to your beliefs. Definitely check out the challenge for that. Tip number 2 was align your actions with your priorities and values. And we're going to cover this in week 1 of my 6-week bootcamp starting October 4th. And then number 3 is create 3 to 5 non-negotiables. This is one of my favorites. So I was talking with a friend and about just like, being a mom, or even, she is busy and doing, constantly, and she runs her own business. She just does a lot of different things. And we were just talking about like, what are the things that we can do to keep us healthy, and not just healthy physically, but healthy emotionally and mentally, right? Because holistic health coach here, right? And I just said, you know what, like I just have these non-negotiables that I just need to do. And obviously as a new mom, like I can't get them in all the time in the way that I would want, but I'm trying to do something like that every day. So the first one is it has to do with the mind, right? I'm all about the mind, body, soul, but is mindset work. And often that comes in a variety of ways. That could be, I have like daily questions that I ask myself to really see where my mindset at. That could be journaling, it could be scripture, it could be prayer, it could be worship music. It could be, my sister got these amazing cards for me. I was like, hey, I want this for my birthday. These mindful morning cards where it's like just starting your day and being more mindful. And I think I picked today's was set your intention for the day. And it's like, okay, well, my intention for today is to, I have a couple intentions, but it is really like show up well for my Facebook Live, connect with my daughter, and connect with my team and do a little bit of work. But then, yeah, connect with friends and family. So anyways, that's some of my non-negotiables, but was just really like mindfulness and mindset work. And that is just so important for me, because for me, I don't necessarily lack wanting to do things. I think I want to do too much. So I just have to get clear on what I want to do and align with my beliefs. So that's mindset work. 2 is kind of like going into my body, and has to do with like nutrition and movement. And so every day I want to move, whether it's I'm cleaning on the weekends, that's usually my movement, or I'm going for a walk, even for 5 to 10 minutes, or I'm getting in an intentional short workout 4 to 5 times a week. I just want to make sure I'm moving. And I even got a really nice Garmin watch for my birthday last year that I love wearing, but also tracks my movement. So it just helps me when I meet my goal steps. It's like, yeah, you moved today, just so that intentional movement. And then nutrition, just eating foods that make me feel good, and physically, emotionally, and mentally, and just really support me in my health and support my daughter. Still breastfeeding over here. Okay, so mind and body, but then also like 3 other ones that really have to do with soul. And I love talking about this because we're going to actually talk about this in week 4 of the bootcamp, primary food or nourished life. Just basically the idea of what primarily feeds us isn't always what's on our plate. And for me, learning and personal development is very huge. And so I try to listen to, I don't always complete it, but start like whether it's 5-10 minutes of a podcast, of a book that I'm reading, or of a training for business or my own health or my own life, or, even being a parent. And scripture and development, just like learning and personal development is a strength of mine, actually, and it's a thing that makes me more like me and helps me be healthy. So mind, body, soul. Then another soul is actually working. And on the weekend, I don't really work typical work, but I'm doing some other like mindset work, or actually, to me, actually being present with my family is helps me work better when I'm getting there. So, but doing something that's in line with my calling. And I believe Made Well in my business right now is part of that, but I believe other things are too, whether it's ministry with our church and so forth, right? So doing something in line with my calling, and that's the soul work. And then fifth is connecting with family and friends. It might be my husband, might be my sister, might be my parents, might be my baby. Well, I connect with all of those basically every day, but like being very intentional with connection. We are not meant to be alone, and we're not meant to do this life alone. And so getting people that can pour into me and I pour into them is very important. And so that, I every day want to address my mind, body, and soul, and mindset work, healthy habit work, and then that nourishing primary food work. And we are talking about all three of those in the boot camp coming up. And the boot camp, and I'll get more to it, is like a foundation for you to really lay the foundations to really have a healthy body and healthy life. Okay. So 1 was look at your beliefs. 2 was align your goals and priorities and values. 3, create 3 to 5 non-negotiables that you're going to try to do every day, even if it's 2 to 3 minutes, 5 minutes of it, right? And then 4 is track your progress. And I actually have this that, it's available for purchase on its own, but we're going to use this a lot in the boot camp, is my food journal and habits tracker, where, if really understanding how food impacts you emotionally and mentally and physically is something you want to do, you're going to want to use the food journal portion, right? Because you track all of that in there. If just tracking your habits or these non-negotiables or this mindset work is something you want to do, that's where the tracker comes in. And I think it's very important to track our progress. And this goes back to what I was going to talk about habits too, is so often we're just focused on the outcome. James Clear in his book, fabulous book, by the way, Atomic Habits, talks about there's, 3 different types of habits. And I interviewed someone for the podcast. She's coming on in October, and she's a part of an upcoming summit I'm doing too, that just talked about this a little bit more. And I loved her analogy where she's talking about onion and how as you peel away the onion, you get to the core. And so outcomes is that outer part of the onion, right? Where, we're focused on that outcome, and that's great, but often it may take you a while to get there. And so how do you celebrate your progress along the way? And that's where, it comes to progress habits or progress goals, right? So maybe your goal is, I want to run a half marathon. That's your outcome, right? But what your progress goals or the process goals is going to be you showing up to start running 5 minutes every day, or you doing that 1 mile run, so there's a plan that gets you there. But so often when it comes to either losing weight, breaking free from eating or food issues, or just feeling confident in our bodies, we somehow forget the process. We would not expect ourselves to go from not even walking regularly to running a marathon, but yet somehow we think that's in other parts of our health that's possible. It's not, right? We need to do that process. But then identity, and I love how we talked about this, and just the idea of like identity is what we believe in, it's who we are. And I had a client who, she wanted to walk, exercise consistently, and she was moving all the time, like because of her type of job. But and we kind of just created an affirmation for herself where it was like, I am someone who walks every day. I am someone who walks every day, versus like, I'm enjoying walking every day. Like that's good, but it becomes an action versus like, it's a part of who you are. And, I'm working on a book, and I'm getting there in making this affirmation come true. But I am a writer. I'm a writer, and sometimes I'm writing content. Like I wrote all the notes for this, and sometimes I'm working on my book. But I really told myself, I am someone who writes every day. Oh, right. So I'm someone who writes 30 minutes every day. And so I started telling myself that to affirm that I am a writer, and so that it becomes easier for me to write, whether it's content, whether it's my book, whatever it is, right? And so really starting to affirm that identity habit as well, right? And that's what I love doing in clients with clients. And we're actually going to talk about that in the 6-week boot camp and dive deeper into that. Is we're actually going to create affirmations and and even teach you how to write those. So start affirming that you're someone who does things, and tracking your progress helps you see that as well. All right. So number 1 was looking at your beliefs. Number 2 was aligning your goals with your values. Number 3 was creating 3 to 5 non-negotiables. Number 4 was tracking your progress. And number 5 was reflecting, celebrating, and adjusting. I call it RCA. This is what I love to do with clients, and I love to do this myself. So often, again, we're writing all this down. You like write everything in your tracker, you're doing all this, but you're not reflecting. And by reflecting, you can ask yourself 3 questions in particular. And we do this every Friday in the Facebook group, right? Friday Reflections is what went well and why, what didn't go so well and why, and what can make next week or the next season even better. And that just helps you really start with positive reinforcement. Like, you're doing well, so let's celebrate that. But what didn't go so well, we're going to adjust that to make next week better. And so this process just really helps you learn how to adapt when things don't go as planned, or helps you even adjust those goals. Maybe you think, I'm going to publish my book by the end of the year, or maybe you think I'm going to run that half marathon by the end of the year, but things come up, which life happens, by the way. So this helps you just adjust and feel good about it, and not beat yourself up, and allow grace in the process, which even Dr. Sean talked about in this week's episode, right? So really, that process of reflection, celebrating, and adjusting can make the difference for you in creating those outcome process identity habits, but really transforming your health and life, and helping you really look towards that inner part of you that is driven to take care of yourself. And when, quote unquote, you don't feel like doing it, you do it, right? So I would love to hear from you if you're watching live, or if you're watching the replay, or if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening, wherever you're listening to this, find some way to interact with me. Feel free to message me on Instagram as well, at Madewell345. But which one of these tips really stood out to you and is something that you need to apply today, right? Looking at your beliefs about food, your body, yourself, those different areas. Is that something you really need to look at and start with? And again, we're going to cover that not in only my bootcamp, but in my Food Freedom Challenge that's starting, like 10 days. Or 2, do you need to create goals that are aligned with your priorities and values? And again, you could simply ask yourself, why is that important? Is this going to help me be more present for my family or not, right? And this is something we're going to do as well in the 6-week bootcamp. 3 was creating non-negotiables for yourself. Like, even if you can't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to do at least this a day. You can start with one thing, like you're going to at least drink your water, or you're going to at least move for 5 minutes, and then add to that. And again, I think it's important to look at the mind, body, soul, but start with one area, okay? And then we're going to cover that too in the bootcamp. But then 4 was tracking your progress, which again, I love my food journal habits tracker for this. This is something that's actually going to be a gift for those who join the bootcamp as well. But really just like tracking your progress along the way, and then reflecting. Number 5, reflecting, celebrating, and adjusting. And sometimes you need someone to help you do this, because it feels hard. It feels like, like you're not doing enough, which is so often what we wrestle with, all right? So of those 5 tips, let me know which ones really stood out to you, which ones you're going to try to work on. And so your motivation, quote unquote motivation, like you can continue to move in your health when life happens or when you don't feel like doing it. All right. So I just want to invite you, if you've probably heard me mention these a couple of times, but if you're listening to this and you're not in the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. But honestly, just join the challenge. The challenge is going to be held in the Facebook group, right? So that way, the More Than Your Weight Women's community, you'll be there. You'll be able to get the live trainings, all that sort of stuff. So join the Food Freedom Challenge, madewell345.com/Food Freedom Challenge, or show notes. Second is my 6-week bootcamp is a group program where I'm bringing together the foundational things that I teach my one-on-one clients to really help create a foundation of success when it comes to caring for your mind, body, and soul, when it comes to really pursuing food freedom mindset, when it comes to taking care of your body, healthy habits, when it comes to really having a thriving soul in life, that primary food, right? Those flourishing life is what I often call it. And those other areas like emotions, relationships, career, all that sort of stuff. And we're going to look at goals that are aligned with that. And then we're going to look at non-scale victories, which we haven't even talked about today, but like really going beyond the scale to starting to celebrate not just what the scale says, but the other progress. This goes along with the reflection, right? That we make, and we're sleeping better, or our clothes are feeling just great on us, or our skin is clear. Those are things worth celebrating. Or we don't label certain foods as good or bad, so those are things we're celebrating. And then we're going to also reflect, celebrate, and act. And so each week there's going to be a focus. There's going to be a little training and worksheets for each week. There's going to be a Facebook group private for just the boot campers. There's going to be every week, there's going to be a live coaching session if you can't make it. There's a replay option as well. And there's tons of resources. There's even some bonuses. You're going to get my meal planning class. You're going to get my whole 30 e-course. And when you register by September 24th, you'll get $100 off plus a 30-minute one-on-one health breakthrough session with me for a very affordable price. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, just join the wait list. You'll get all the details. You get the PDF, get a welcome video that says, here, this is what it's about. And honestly, if you want to book a call, you'll get that link in there too. But join the wait list, because the wait list people are going to be the first to know when registration opens. Okay, so a lot of good stuff for you today. I just, again, want to encourage you to listen to this week's episode, but really even from this one, what is one thing that I mentioned that was a haha takeaway that you need to implement? And then your call to action is to go get some support through my Food Freedom Challenge and joining the wait list. All right, join the wait list. All you gotta do is enter your name and email, madewell345.com/bootcamp, and join the challenge, because it starts September 13th. And every day there's going to be just a small, simple action and some coaching support for you along the way. All right. I enjoyed this episode and this rendition of Training Thursdays. Again, if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you join my Facebook group, because every Thursday, when it's possible, I do one of these trainings. Might have to adjust the time that I do it based off of everyone's schedule, but you'll be the first to know in the Facebook group and even in the PS of my Tuesday email when I'm going live. But if you're in the Facebook group, you'll get the little event invite too. So join us in the More Than Your Weight Women's community, but also be sure to sign up for the challenge and the wait list, because I really want you to get that mindset support, but that mind, body, and soul support. All right. Grateful for you all, and I'll see you later.